Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Van Holt's back again with another E-Commerce Conversations. I hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Internet from me, Jordan. Welcome, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I guess I could say you're one of my mates.
That is right. I like what you did there.
Yeah. Founder of Mate. Why don't you give our listeners a quick rundown of what you guys are doing?
Absolutely. I'd be glad to. So Mate is a brand that launched back in December of 2020. It's a men's sexual wellness brand that offers natural supplements for those tough to talk about issues that a ton of guys experience at one point in their lives, but are often hesitant to seek out solutions for. So we're talking erectile dysfunction, we're talking premature ejaculation, just some of those super frustrating issues that can take away from the overall enjoyment of what should be a nothing but satisfactory experience, but can unfortunately add a bit more stress and anxiety to the bedroom experience. We're trying to remove those stresses and help guys just enjoy their time under the sheets to the fullest.
Yeah, I got to imagine that's a very interesting market to be in, and like a lot of different angles. I know there's some major players in the space and they seem to kind of go, I don't know, is humor the best marketing channel for this? Or like, how do you try to connect with your audience?
Yeah, so some of those players that you mentioned, I think they deserve a ton of credit for what they did, both Hims and Roman, in terms of destigmatizing much of the conversation around men's sexual health. I think for some reason, there was a lot of taboo around erectile dysfunction, for example, even though it impacts nearly half of all guys at one point in their lives. But through awesome brand imagery and photography and copywriting, they really made it more acceptable to actually seek out a solution. So from that perspective, I give them a ton of credit. I've got some issues in regards to other realms of their business, but from that respect, I give them a ton of credit. And as you mentioned, they have approached it from both a sense of humor and an educational perspective. So I think you really have to maintain a delicate balance because it can't just all be funny. At the end of the day, a guy wants to know, what's the science behind your product? How can I be sure it's actually going to work? And how do I know it's safe, side effect free, effective, natural? So it's definitely a delicate balance that we try to maintain from that sense.
Yeah. So like 2 years into the business, how are you guys finding an ability to chat with your audience? You know, what are you doing to get in front of your customers?
Yeah, so I look to what others have done in the space, and I think what John over at Strix has done, I believe he's appeared on the podcast once or twice before. He has approached it similar to what I have sought to do in terms of really breaking down that wall and speaking directly to your existing and prospective customers. And he's done such an incredible job of doing that on TikTok for what was also previously a slightly stigmatized topic in terms of makeup for men or cosmetics for men. And we really sought to approach it in a similar fashion. TikTok has been one of our greatest customer acquisition channels thus far on the organic side, just because we're really able to speak directly to the pain points that customers deal with. We're able to share that we understand where they're coming from. We're able to get a sense of what they're looking for from a product and really even make iterations based on what we're hearing from them. So for example, our packaging, the first iteration had the word mate on the outside of the box, but from communication with our customers, we realized that pure discreetness and confidentiality is of utmost importance to them, especially when it comes to a product in the sexual wellness space. So our packaging is now completely discreet, no outside branding or wording on that outer packaging. So that's just one example of how we've sought to connect with our audience. Another example is The first product we launched was Mate Endurance, a natural supplement for premature ejaculation to help guys last longer in bed. Little did we know that the opposite is an issue that a ton of guys deal with as well, an issue known as delayed ejaculation. And that's often caused by taking antidepressants, for example, which cause you to last too long. So we took that feedback to heart. We saw that that was something that a ton of people were commenting on our TikTok content. We turned to our formulation team and determined that this is something that we should be addressing. And we sought to figure out a science-backed approach to addressing that issue. So that's definitely a product that we have in the pipeline now as well.
Oh, that's pretty exciting. Your core two products right now are Endurance and Ignite.
That's right.
And they're in the supplement space, right?
That's right. They're both once daily supplements.
Yeah. So you talk about like the science-based approach. I imagine, the supplement industry is very much rife with unscrupulous claims. And what is your process for backing it by science?
Yeah, I've got a huge advantage being the son of a urologist. So I kind of grew up learning about all things men's sexual health from a very early age. So when I turned to my dad and told him, look, on the premature ejaculation side, the two prominent solutions that people are using nowadays are either numbing sprays, which just desensitize the area. And my whole thinking is, what's the point of lasting longer if you can't even enjoy the experience to the fullest? The second option are prescription antidepressants such as sertraline, which are just being prescribed for off-label use, meaning that they're not actually approved by the FDA for the purpose of treating premature ejaculation, but it was just found that a side effect of those drugs was that they allowed guys to last longer in bed. So I turned to him and I said, look, I think there's a better way of doing this in a more natural science-based approach. What can we do? So given his 30 plus years of practicing medicine, he had a good sense of what systems needed to take place in the human body to help prolong the overall sexual stamina process. And it really came down to increasing serotonin production. And from there, he worked with a team of pharmacologists and other urologists to determine what ingredients were necessary to do just that. It's a mix of L-tryptophan, 5-HTP. If you look at our supplement fact panel, these are all listed ingredients. So I'm not really giving away anything here. So from there, we didn't just want to trust the ingredients individually. We took it a step further and actually did clinical studies to ensure that the product's ingredient combination would be as effective as we were looking for. And fortunately it was. And only then did we actually bring the product to market.
Yeah. What does that look like then? I guess there's market research labs. I mean, because essentially this is based on like consumer feedback, right? Like, or is there, it's not like, I mean, I don't want to be too graphic here, but it's not like, the old Porky's movie where the nurse puts on a glove and then, has a stopwatch or anything like that, right?
Yeah. So there are two ways that premature ejaculation studies are typically done. The first are stopwatch measurements, which you mentioned, which are much more objective. We decided to go down more of the behavioral subjective route because we had a sense that stopwatch measurements could potentially add more pressure or external factors that may impact performance. So we simply did behavioral questionnaires asking guys, how satisfactory was your overall sexual experience? Did you last as long as you would have liked? Do you feel as though your partner also had a sexually satisfying experience? So it was very subjective. And as a bootstrapped brand, we didn't really have the opportunity to go down the route of third-party clinical testing. We chose to go down the route of seeing who was willing to participate within my dad's own clinic. And from those participants, half of them were part of a placebo group and half of them were part of the test group. And we just analyzed the results from there.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. So let's talk about bootstrapping. You guys say you're bootstrapping. Like, how have you been able to, fund the project, get it off the ground? And kind of, is that going to be the blueprint for the future? Or because this is, you're competing against these brands that have millions of dollars of, investment and revenue right now to kind of make it harder for you. I would guess raise those rates up a little bit.
Yeah. So, in terms of bootstrapping, I started off my career in investment banking, and I was able to save up a good amount from just my regular salary and end of year bonus, which is what allowed me to actually fund the initial inventory purchase and the website design and development. And from that point on, I can't say that it was always my intention to go down the bootstrapping route, but once I realized what the limitations to my business were in terms of not being able to spend on certain marketing channels, just given the product segment and category that we fall within, I realized that maybe there isn't really as much of a need to raise boatloads of money and pour it into marketing. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise that traditional channels like Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, paid TikTok limited and prevented us from advertising on those channels. It kind of forced me to get scrappy and work within my means. And once I realized that organic TikTok, influencer collaborations, Google ads, those three channels alone could generate revenue at scale, that's when I realized that maybe there is an alternative to raising outside capital. So while I am competing with some large brands that have raised tons of external venture capital investment, as you mentioned, oftentimes they're not profitable because they kind of have the luxury of testing things without caring about profitability from the get-go as much.
Yeah, so you've leaned heavily onto the organic side of things with a little bit of AdWords. You talk about like finding that scalability. The challenge I've always had personally with organic is it's on the organic time frame. It's not on the business owner's time frame. Like
Right.
how do you have that patience to be able to commit to this? I guess maybe it's just your only option. There's just nothing else you can do, or
Yeah. So when you kind of choose to operate in a more lean model where you don't really have employees and choose to work with freelancers, or you don't have tremendous fixed costs, you have the flexibility to give it some time to see how the organic is going to perform. So if you don't have that TikTok video go viral in a particular month, that's why it's so important to keep your fixed costs so low from an employee standpoint, from an operating expense standpoint, so that you're able to kind of pivot on a monthly basis and understand that giving yourself as much runway is of critical importance when you don't have that constant influx of external capital coming your way. So, in an ideal perspective, I'd love to be able to hire two growth managers and a ton of other employees in-house, but I've decided to take the brand for now in a route where flexibility is of utmost importance given our limitations on the marketing side. And that's kind of allowed us to work within the limitations of organic performance, knowing that not every post is going to perform, knowing that not every influencer collaboration is going to perform up to standards. But if you give yourself enough shots at bat, you'll eventually find something that sticks and resonates with your audience.
you mentioned you're doing influencer collaborations. Are those paid? Walk me through that process from finding to reaching out to them, the communication, and then the expectations and how you're able to, leverage their audience.
Yeah. So there are a ton of great physicians on TikTok nowadays that have established significant followings for themselves, predominantly just to share educational content that is often not as readily available on the internet. So a ton of urologists, a ton of sex education specialists on TikTok that are now just teaching methods and techniques of how to spice things up in your relationship, how to improve your performance in bed. So just by naturally scrolling on TikTok, I think the algorithm has realized what sort of audience we're catering to. And oftentimes these influencer collaborations just come about by me naturally coming across an individual's profile on TikTok on my For You page, who I think would be a great brand ambassador and would be able to explain the advantages of our product. And from there, we either reach out to them through a simple Instagram direct message or find their email address in their bio. We share some context around what we're trying to do here at Mate and why we think they'd be such a great fit. And if they are as equally interested as we are, we then negotiate on terms of the paid agreement, whether that's an upfront payment, whether it's payment based on how many views the video gets, or whether it's payment based on how many times their promo code gets used. And from there, we try and really create a long-term partnership with these influencers so that it looks less so like a one-off marketing campaign, but more so that these are evangelizers who understand where we're coming from as a brand and the value proposition that we're offering.
When you make that proposal, I want to dig into the negotiation a little bit because I feel like, me personally, that's something we've never done well. So you have three options, essentially an affiliate option, a pay-per-view, or a flat rate, which I would assume is based on past performance of their content.
Right.
Will you go and give them those three options and they get a pick? Or is it something like, I just have a gut feel that this person's going to, generate a lot of views or convert a lot? Or
So typically in an ideal world, a creator just wants a flat fee so that they get guaranteed payment regardless of how the video performs, regardless of how many sales they bring in, because oftentimes they're not as invested in the success of the collaboration as you as the brand owner are, unfortunately, which is why we offer all three options to try and see if they would be willing to work on more of a performance model. And whereas that often ends up hurting us if the video performs exceptionally well, in our minds, we see it as an opportunity to show the content creator, look how much upside potential there is here, in an effort to try and strengthen that relationship for future collaborations. So an example that I'll give you, a recent TikTok collaboration that we did with a sex educator. She came to us asking for a $1,500 flat rate for a single TikTok post. And while we were open to that originally, we thought, why not do a tiered structure in order to try and hedge our risk so that if the video only gets up to like 50 or 100,000 views, we cap our payment at around $500. But if the video gets over 1 million views, she can receive up to $2,500. And lo and behold, the video just resonated with her audience so well that it ended up getting over 1 million views, and she ended up getting $2,500, which was 1,000 more than what she had originally come to us asking for. And we didn't even mind ultimately because we saw the video perform so well, and it just incentivized and motivated her to want to work on future collaborations together. So we definitely try and approach it in a way that allows both parties to win at the end of the day.
so, like a $2,500 investment, 1 million view TikTok, it's got to drive, in my opinion, like at least $4,000 to $5,000 in sales to kind of like break even. Like, is that enough views to drive that? Or is it something where he or she needs to create, 4 or 5 videos and then you finally have that compounding effect?
Yeah, so one of the benefits of being a subscription focused brand is that even if the video only generates 0.5 or 1x times revenue on that initial investment for the video, we're kind of estimating a certain lifetime value of each customer that we bring on. So we're able to give ourselves a bit more leeway on the sort of calculus of that initial investment. But as you mentioned, there are other videos where we're making a $500 investment upfront because the creator may not want to do the tiered structure, and the video may absolutely flop and not even generate 1 or even 2 sales. And from there, we need to determine, is it more so because the creator is not resonating with his or her audience, or is it because the algorithm, for whatever reason, chose not to push out that video? So it's really on a case-by-case basis. But in terms of what you mentioned, in an ideal world, we're trying to generate at least 1x revenue on that content creator collaboration so that future months of that subscription are more profit generating.
How are you tracking it? Are you doing like a code for all these creators or any kind of link UTM codes or post-purchase survey?
Yeah, so we provide individual unique UTM codes for each TikTok collaboration that we work on. And then there's a very clear bump in sales on the 1 to 3 days after the video is posted. So we have kind of a baseline of what we're expecting to come in on a daily basis from sales, just from our paid efforts on Google, for example. And at that point, if we don't have a video going viral on our own branded channel, we know that a significant portion of that incrementality in those 1 to 3 days after that video has been posted from the creator is coming from the performance of that video.
So it seems like a lot of just kind of like ad hoc data analysis on a regular basis, right? Are you the person who's handling that, or are you working with consultants for that? Like, to me, it seems like, I guess it's a long-winded question, but to me, it's like, that's a lot of stuff going on. Finding the influencer, negotiating the deal, analyzing your data to see if there's any kind of boost when they post, and what is the outliers of that jump, and being able to find that and discover that. There must be a lot of communication with the creator when they post it and send you a link. Is that all part of like the upfront communication, and like how do you handle all that bandwidth?
Yeah, and I think that question goes to a bigger answer of, as a solo founder and entrepreneur trying to bootstrap a brand, with this kind of being my first venture, at what point do you determine what sorts of activities can be outsourced to a freelancer? At what point do you determine when you need to hire in-house? At what point do you determine whether an agency model makes more sense? So those are always questions that I'm considering, just to determine how to best allocate my time to initiatives that generate the greatest return on my time. But to answer your particular question, yeah, it really is a time-intensive process of sourcing influencers that are relevant to the brand, then negotiating with them, then sending out the sample and actually following up, because there is a certain drop-off between sending out a sample and having somebody actually post the content. And from there, determining how it actually performs and paying them out based on that. So there really are a ton of steps to it, and it is quite manual. At a certain point, it'll obviously make more sense to outsource it to, whether it's a virtual assistant or whether it's an influencer coordinator, because for now, it is quite a time-intensive process. I'm not going to lie.
How are you managing the data? Are you using Airtable or Notion, or are there any kind of tools you're leaning on, or just spreadsheets and Excel?
Yeah, it's quite manual as of now. I haven't automated tremendous facets of the business. So for the most part, it just comes down to manual Excel to get a monthly snapshot of the health of the business.
Okay. And then, like, how many influencers are you working with at a given point? Like, how are you remembering all these follow-ups and things like that? That's crazy.
Yeah. So the challenging thing is that it's not like we really have a product that we can seed to anyone and assume that they'll post content around it. Unfortunately, it's not like we're selling super comfortable pajamas or slippers or like a teeth whitening tool. Unfortunately, given the nature of our product, we first have to find individuals that are willing to try it, spend time researching it, and from there actually associate their personal brand and their face with the product. And it's not as frequent that you'll find an individual who's willing to promote an erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation supplement as it is that you could like seed somebody comfy pajamas and hope that they post a TikTok on that. So it's not like we're going out to hundreds of influencers a month and just seeding product and seeing who actually posts it and tracking it from there. If we're seeding an individual product, it's very likely that they've committed to posting content, and we're in constant communication with them as to when that content is going to be posted so that we can track it quite granularly. So ideally love to get to the point where we have 50 plus influencers a month that are willing to post content, but just given our limitations as to the individuals who are willing to post content, it hasn't gotten to that point quite yet.
You mentioned you're also doing Google AdWords. Is that something you're handling in-house and just putting on Performance Max like everybody else, or?
So that is actually one of the business activities that I've outsourced to an outside freelancer that I found on Upwork, who's done a good job managing the account, just pulling levers and toggles based on monthly budgets and just testing things here and there. Performance Max is the campaign structure that we've leaned in since the change from smart shopping. But yeah, for the most part, just testing out different levers. And I think the great thing with our product is that it's a very intent driven search. It's unlikely that somebody is searching how to last longer in bed or how to achieve an erection naturally unless they're actually dealing with that issue. And from there, we're trying to capture that audience by differentiating ourselves with Google Shopping ads that really stand out based on the imagery that we're showing.
The other thing you mentioned earlier is, you worked with your dad for the formulation. It sounds like your family's pretty involved in the business. Do you find any kind of odd dynamics going on with that or challenges that you've been facing working with family members?
So for the most part, my dad is actually only involved in the formulation phase, and he was much more involved in the ground up launch of the business. Since December 2020, I've kind of handled the reins on my own from a marketing, operations, finance perspective. Anytime there is a medical related customer service question, I'm able to turn to either him or some of our advisors to get his input. But on a day-to-day basis, he's still heavily involved in his own medical practice. So he's not really able to allocate the time that's necessary. So there hasn't been too much crossover in that sense.
Yeah. And you also mentioned rolling out some new products coming up in the future. You said about 5 more products that you have. Are they all going to be in the supplement space or are you going to grow beyond that?
Yeah, so the next cohort of products are all going to be in the supplement space. There's going to be one for libido testosterone support, one for prostate health, and one for delayed ejaculation, as I mentioned, which was based on the feedback that we actually received from our TikTok audience and from our existing subscribers and customers. So I think there's a clear roadmap to getting to 5 supplements by the first half of 2023 and 7 supplements by the end of 2023. And from there, it's going to be interesting to see where we pivot. I think in the sexual health space, there's already been so much done on the toys and the lubes and the condoms that it's a little bit more difficult to find an angle of differentiation from there. So we're going to resort to what we've done from the start of leaning into the feedback of our customers to get a better understanding of what they're looking for from our brand, which will drive many of our future R&D decisions.
Are you doing that through like just email surveys or on website surveys? How do you capture that information?
Yeah, it's email surveys, just essentially clavioblasts to existing subscribers as well as abandoned cart emails, for example. And the TikTok sticker feature allows you to just post a question in any video that you post and having people either respond with comments or directly to the question to get a better understanding of what sorts of products they'd be looking for.
You seem to really lean a lot onto TikTok. I think it's as an old guy, not really understanding the platform and kind of shaking my fist at the sky. Like, like you're leaned into that. And it sounds like a crucial part of your growth. Do you feel like this is going to be like continue to be the future, or do you ever have concerns of building on such a new platform in such a short form video format as well?
Yeah, so when I originally decided to get on TikTok for the brand, first off, I never expected to be the face of my own brand on TikTok. But as you're probably familiar with, any brand that has success on TikTok really needs to associate a single face to that brand. I think viewers come back to that brand because they enjoy seeing that individual's content. They like kind of seeing that uniformity. So that was something that was very important to me, figuring out who was going to be the face of that brand. And at that time, we were really just as bootstrapped as one can be, which is what drove the decision to have me be the face of the brand and become more and more comfortable with understanding the trends, the dances, the viral sounds, and leveraging all of those to make the channel as effective as possible. One concern that I had when we originally launched on TikTok was that I had a doubt that most people who were on TikTok were guys in their teens, 20s, maybe 30s. But I quickly realized that there's actually a ton of people who are aged 50 plus on TikTok and spend hours a day on the platform, just scrolling and learning new concepts and skills and all that. So that was something that was really eye-opening to me, understanding that my original notion that TikTok would not be as successful because we'd be kind of targeting an audience who wasn't our primary intent audience didn't end up turning out to be true. But there is significant risk in investing so much in organic TikTok. The algorithm's constantly changing. You don't know how a particular video is going to perform. You need to post consistently. You need to be on top of trending sounds and dances to be in trend with your audience. And it really is a time investment, and there's no guarantee that it'll perform in any particular month. I think you can speak to any brand that's invested heavily in TikTok, and they'll tell you that you can't really lean on that as your sole channel. It can be a critical, crucial channel, but ultimately there's so much variability in how it's going to perform that you're going to ultimately be forced to get creative in terms of pursuing other avenues.
Yeah. Where can people buy your products if they need it or learn more about what you're building?
Yeah, the URL is goodnightmate.com. Our TikTok handle is goodnight_mate. And you can find me on Twitter at Jordan Elist.
Sweet, Jordan. Well, thanks for coming by the e-commerce conversations. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Hope you learned a couple nuggets or two. Cheers and keep on growing.
Thank you, Eric.